well.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's a good jump off point where today we can go into talking about the overuse of technology, the desire to do things, but then procrastinating and finding it hard to actually get them into your routine. And then also a bit of the dynamic of living with your parents and the challenges that that can bring up.
100%. Yeah, yeah. I think as well that it's to do with the parent thing, like any environmental kind of factors. So it could be like people that, maybe drinking a lot or, using drugs or something or doing something that doesn't align with your values.
Yeah, and
Um,
living in that environment can be such a triggering thing for you and challenge your state.
100%, yeah, and draining, like I think, you're better off being on your own or living with people that, kind of bring up your energy than being in any kind of environment. It's gonna have an effect in other areas of your life, your
Yeah,
environment.
yeah, for sure.
And the procrastination and extra phone use I can definitely relate to. It's something I've been doing a lot and like compulsively, like it's an addiction, and it's something that's actually really hard to manage if you don't like implement sort of strategies around it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with using your phone, so you can get like things that check the metrics of it, like how often you open the screen and go into apps. And some of the times I've checked that, like I've opened the phone home screen like 300 times a day.
Yeah, well,
And,
yep.
from like a neural pathway perspective, once you're repeating an action so many times, it becomes like really like, like goes from a worn path to a highway that's just like pulling you down that path. So you automatically will pull your phone out and just start opening it and doing it. And you're like, wait, what am I doing?
100%, yeah, not even knowing what I'm scrolling for or, my purpose. I'll start scrolling and it's 20 minutes in, 30 minutes in, or even 10 minutes in, which is a long time just to be pointlessly scrolling.
Yeah.
And I suppose you look at that dopamine addiction, but, yeah, it's like you said, man, it really pulls you into that when you've been doing it in a habitual way for such a long time. It's quite difficult to not do that. Like, I find myself, it's like deleting Facebook and Instagram
Yeah.
and then re-downloading it like a day later
Yeah.
and going against, what I know is more beneficial for me. And then, yeah, my productivity's just dropped massively because I've spent so much time throughout the day scrolling pointlessly.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That type of focus really doesn't cultivate like a greater attention span or a greater ability to be productive. You're putting a lot of high focus and energy into scrolling. But because I think there's so many like pictures being like thrown and information that you can't really like digest. It's just one thing, then the next thing. It really shortens your attention span, and then it's harder to do other things. So you're like, oh fuck, you go to do something productive, and you can just feel that resistance, and you're like, I'll just take some time off and just like go to the phone and just scroll for a bit, almost to relax, but it's still burning energy.
100%, man. Yeah, it relates to other areas of your life, I think that. And I find that the way you start your day massively, impacts the rest of your day.
Yeah,
So, like, I've
yeah,
been
one
I've been
hundred percent.
reaching over to my phone and I'll grab that straight away, my eyes still, like, half closed, and I'm going on, like, Facebook, Snapchat, or dating apps, like,
Yeah, and
obsessive.
just going through each one, just like
Yeah,
mining the fucking dopamine in the form of messages. What notification do I have here? Like, what can I see next?
100%,
Yeah,
and the thing is, like, I'm aware of how much more productive and how much better my day will be, and I guess that's whereas that addiction kinda it is like an addiction, because it's the same as, like, if you're aware that, alcohol and that's not good for you, but you're still going 2, 3 times a week to have a drink with the boys,
yeah,
and you do that for years on end, and, it's having such a detriment to, like, your mental health. So what my plan is, like, I've been doing well, I'm 57 days sober now.
mm,
So, yeah, on the 60th day, it's going to be my third month I'm going into. So each month I'm looking at one area of my life that's like holding me back or stopping me from getting to my goals.
mm,
And that's what I'm going to like implement. So for this month, it's going to be like phone use, really cutting out like social media for the entire month
yeah,
and just really bringing it back to basics, like 7 p.m., no phone. Maybe
yeah,
watch a movie or something, but
yeah.
anything after like 6, 7 p.m., I wanna not be using my social media or anything.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the importance of that is, with a thing called flick rate. So basically, like, say television is probably the best example. In the 1960s or 70s, the flick rate of television was like 5 minutes. Like when you watched a TV show, the screen would stay still for 5 minutes. They'd be acting it out in the one area for 5 minutes, and then it would go to the next scene.
Mhm.
So as we've gone on, technology's improved, but also our desire for stimulation has increased. Now we're getting to a point, you watch an action movie and it's like zero point 0.5 of a second between scenes, like you can't even keep up, giving you a seizure type of thing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, 100%. So that like stimulation, we need more now to be stimulated. Like I
exactly.
was watching this thing I posted the other day about being a '90s kids, the last kids without social media and stuff. And I had this one point where it said that we used to come home and you'd watch what movie was on that night. You didn't have
Yeah.
or what show. You didn't have like 500 different selections, Netflix, Disney. And the interesting thing is, like, people think I do as well, like, negatively about this time of life, we've got everything at the touch of our fingertips now, and everything's so much easier, and we're like, "Oh, we've all got anxiety and depression." It's like, then when things are more simplified and harder, you could say,
Yeah.
people seem to be happier.
Less choice. And I think
Mm,
that really factors into it because, like, it's great having the potential we have now, but it also can be debilitating trying to choose what to do because you've got kind of infinite potential and you could do things, but it's also like decision fatigue is such a real thing. Like, fuck, just trying to work out what to eat. Like, lately, I've been looking for a car to buy, and like, yeah, I can feel myself getting fatigued from putting so much energy and be like, wait, what do I get here? Like, you know,
100%, yeah.
but yeah, back in the 90s when like the choice was very limited, you just made do with it and you enjoy it because, you didn't have any other options.
Yeah, yeah, and that made life easy. It's kinda like when you're a kid, you go to school, and that's just what you had to do. So every day you went to school, you had structure, you had things. Then when you're an adult, you have all these you're free of choice, like, there's 50, 100,000 different ways to make money and make an income.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that makes you instead of being like, "Oh, okay," like back in the day, they'd be like, "My dad was a butcher, I'm a butcher."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
"My dad was a bricklayer, I'm a bricklayer," whatever it may be. Now it's like, I can be a content creator. I could be this, I could be
Mm.
that. I could work, like start my own business, clothing brand. I could do furniture. I could do, you got so many choices, which is a positive, but a negative at the same time.
Yeah. And especially like for me, like I don't want to make the wrong choice where I'm like, oh, I could do this, but then is that like my highest calling? Like, is that the right path to take? Maybe it would have been more lucrative. It would have been more fulfilling to do something else. And then in having that like indecision and like desire to get it right, it stops me taking action in the now.
Mhm.
And then no, more is lost through indecision than wrong decision. I think the old
Yeah,
saying goes.
definitely. And I suppose it adds to that procrastination. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because you've got so many different options instead of being like, all right, I'm going to go down the path of A. You've got 50, 1,000, 100 different options. So yeah, it makes it difficult. I can definitely relate to that. Like come from building trade going into like, now I'm going into counseling and I've done youth work. But then there's also that side of me that, couldn't, wants to look down the path of content creating. And I think
Mm.
it's really important to try different things to find your path,
Yeah.
but having so many options available these days, it yeah, it definitely can be draining.
Yeah. And from my own experience, the thing is too, like I get shiny object syndrome, I guess it's called, where I'm like, oh, this thing looks good. Like that could be the path. And I'll make like some progress down it. And then I'll be like, no, actually something else. And it's good because I'm trying a lot of things. And, obviously the thing that sticks will be the thing. But also I am recognizing at some point staying committed to one path and allowing it to show results is probably better than trying to find the right path through doing, 20 different things and not getting to that point of success or where it's going to create return.
Definitely, man. Definitely. And they say that like I suppose if you're not getting the results like immediately or you're getting that gratification kind of within a quick time frame, you jump to
Y-
another area.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm guilty of that myself, man. I do that heaps. So yeah, like it'll pay off in the long run, and I'm not saying don't sample other things. Obviously you want to I think it's good to try different things to get different perspectives, but they always talk about like on, these motivational speeches and that I see that find your path and go 100%
Mm.
towards that.
Yeah.
And I guess that's, yeah, like when if you've got all your eggs in a basket, you can't really grow anything to your full potential,
Yeah.
because you're spread
Yeah.
out 20% here, 20% there,
Yeah.
20% over here.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, as long as it aligns with your values and, it's creating a better version of yourself, then it's probably, commit to that and see how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, and give it time, I suppose, just time to kinda reap the fruits from, your labor. And yeah, I guess another one is just making sure the juice is worth the squeeze in a way. Like if like you said, it's something that aligns with your values. If
Mm.
it's something like I've found for me, the building trade right now doesn't align with my values.
Yeah.
Like I'm sober and that seems to be an environment that, um, I guess that they kind of glorify drinking and,
Mm.
partying and even just the reminders for me of like, that's what I used to do. I used to
Yeah.
go to the building trade
Throwing
then
you
I'd
back to a previous version of yourself.
100% that, after work, I'd go and smoke a few bongs and then, I'd go have a few drinks with a mate and then I'd go to, because I was a tradie, and I'd go to
Yeah.
work the next day and I'd always have a good tan and, it was just like the lifestyle. So, yeah, right now that doesn't align with my values. Like working hard and being sore all the time is not something I want in my life. And there
No.
are other avenues like the counseling, podcast, whatever it may be, where you can have this such a more balanced life and still get the same income.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a very key point. And I was also going to add that the people you surround yourself with, the tribe that you kind of belong to does have an impact on your own behavior. Like working with guys that are going to be going to the pokies, drinking, like, doing the behaviors you don't want to do anymore. It does, lean you towards like, oh, that's normal behavior. Like for me, when I was working away, mining and doing civil work, they'd grab a pie and a nice coffee from the service station, and I'm grabbing a salad and stuff to begin with. But it was just opening my mind to, oh, that's an option. I can do that. That's a normal thing to do. And then, I grabbed a pie every now and then. And, it's not something I would normally do. So even like I've found like, I was a pretty disciplined person coming from like 8 months of yoga and meditation and
Mhm.
like healthy eating. And I was still finding myself getting drawn into like behaviors that I didn't want to. So, I do think there's a lot to be said for that. Plus, the environment where if you're working long hours, physically intensive, like a bit more of that coarse masculine energy, it can stress you, especially if that's not like a environment that's going to like bring you into the best version of yourself.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, and I've found, it makes me question my own beliefs, and I guess that's a sign to a degree that I'm not real strong in myself. Not 100% where I wanna be in
Mm.
myself and who I am, but like you said, I'll be easily influenced,
Yeah.
So, like, because 'cause they're all going to the pub, I'm like, "Oh, you know what? Maybe I won't drink, but I'll play the pokies a little, because
Yeah.
that's what we're doing, and it's boys, and we've been listening to music, working hard all day,"
Yeah.
like, so I can get skewed off my path by just being around a group of people that isn't kind of aligned with my values. So that's what my preference at the moment, like especially in early sobriety. I'm on my own a lot, man.
Mm.
Like I do a lot of stuff on my own. Like I'll still go to Marion, go the city, go down Glenelg at night and stuff. But I just like to avoid being influenced and steered off the path that I know is going to work best for my growth. I pretty much just hang out with myself and girls. So I find that girls don't tend to have that macho
Yeah. And like,
egotistical
you know,
kind of
n-
behavior.
not the unhealthy habits as much either, and not the influence either as well.
Yeah, yeah, and the catch ups you have with them is more based around like, catch up, watch a movie, go and get dinner. It's not like, when you catch up with mates, like they bring a six pack or a 10
Mm.
pack, one of them's having 5 joints in front of you. Or I mean, this is, my group of friends generally. But even yeah, like a lot of people with like men, particularly in Australia and just men in general, that's the go-to. Like we'll meet at the pub, or
Yeah.
we'll go out tonight, try to pick up girls. So yeah, just being on my own right now is I think the best thing for my growth. Or with people like you said that kind of align with your values. And the building trade's definitely not that for me right now.
No. And I think
Yeah.
coming out of addiction and into sobriety, like having that time to yourself is important to, you know, I guess find stability and connection with yourself is important. Like I've found the times that I've steered away from addiction, getting to be in my own energy and comfortable with that and not needing to be around others was really key.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, man. And I was just on that, like, so disconnected from myself,
Mm,
like this in the last 2 months, like, so I've done more in the last 2 months than I've done in years, man. Because I was just, moving from one drug to the other. In my good times, I was, drinking 3 times a week or, 2 to 3. And I thought, you know what, I've got
that's
this under
manageable.
control,
Yeah.
even though I was getting blind drunk and like smoking weed at the end, smoking cigarettes.
Yep.
But, yeah, I was so disconnected from myself, man, like, and I kept putting all my values and all my needs second, people pleasing that. So I'm really just getting to a point now, like I'm, yeah, nearly at 60 days where I'm more comfortable with myself. Like it's a long journey to go,
Mm,
but I'm just starting to feel comfortable enough with myself that I'm standing up for what I believe in. I'm, you know, putting my points across and yeah, I have that strength to be like, no, mate, that's not for me right now. I'm saying no a lot more,
yeah.
which is like a real positive, but it's definitely a journey and I'm in like the early stages of it after many, many years of being disconnected.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you said something earlier, the like, not strong sense of self. And I think I suffered that and do at times still. Like the journey's not linear. I'm way ahead of where I was, but also I'm having like peaks and troughs of, gains and setbacks. And I think that knowing what you want, being able to stand up for it. And, it really does require you to know what you value, what's important to you, what's acceptable, what's not. And then to be able to have that confidence to say, I'm not going to have this in my life and I'm not going to allow treatment of me in a certain way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That reminds me of like a saying, like mean what you say what you mean, but don't say it mean.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
something that I've been playing with lately. Like, yeah, I've forgotten what I was gonna say.
No, because that's the balance point to be able to communicate things that aren't acceptable, but then also to do it in a balanced way where you're not actually projecting it at people. Because you can kind of go to that knee jerk reaction of like being like, fuck off. Like say if you're drawing a boundary where like someone's getting on your nerves and instead of like being like, hey, like, let's not do that, you wait until they get to that point of going to cross you and then like you come down
You
hard.
snap. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%, man. And yeah, I've done that so much. I think when you've been a people pleaser for so long or disconnected with yourself, or you put other people's needs in front of yours, being like an empath and that it's really difficult and uncomfortable to put boundaries in, which are
Mm,
just to the average person, just like it's just how you live.
yeah.
You know what I mean? But for me, I'm finding that one, yeah, that's one particular thing that I've been struggling with, like, and I've gotten so much better. And I do tend to be the type of person that focuses on what I'm not doing, as
Mm.
opposed to being grateful for how far I've come. So yeah, I keep that in mind. But yeah, it's definitely been a bit uncomfortable trying to just basic boundaries, like saying no to someone if I don't want to do something, simply because I don't want to do it, and
Mm.
that's okay.
Yeah, and
You
you feel
know?
guilty and, like, your mind brings up so many things where you're like, "Oh, no, you can't not do that." Like, they're, like, leaning on you for this, like, they're that you're gonna let them down, like, all of those things.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting on that topic? I lived with a friend, and it really became clear to me how, like, some people are in a self-focused stage and others are highly conscientious of others. And I don't know, maybe it's upbringing, like where you've had to suppress your own self and put the focus on the external. And then
Mm.
it creates, and I think like, suppression of self, trauma, and maybe like a little bit of like your innate kind of character of soul is, more looking at the needs of others, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. I
Mhm.
think that your childhood plays a massive part, man, and your like role models and your relationships with your parents
The
and
dynamics.
the dynamics with your family play a massive role in the person you are as an adult. Like I think for me personally, like being a people pleaser, like my mum definitely is an empath and people
Mm,
pleaser and very selfless person. So I got that from my mum, but then my father being very like argumentative and very dominant, that it got to a point with me where I just gave in
Mm.
because it wasn't worth the argument, and the reality was he was louder, more powerful
Yeah.
than me most of my life. I mean, I fought back like crazy as soon as I got big enough,
Yeah.
but like he controlled everything. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like he had the money. I lived in his house under his roof, so I had to listen to a lot of stuff that kids shouldn't have to. And I got to a point. Don't remember the specific time, but I remember a time where I was almost so depleted. I just went, I give up. Like it's
Mm.
just easier to agree with him than to have the war and go through that level of stress where I lose anyway, because even if I win the point, I win the argument, whatever, he then, can take
Has
advantage of me and take away, okay, you've got the car this week, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Oh, well, now I can't pay you this week as much, or I can't give you work this week. So it's
Yeah.
working with him. So
You
he
win
had
the
all the
battle, but
power.
lose the war type scenario.
100%, man. And like now that I'm sober, I'm just getting back the person I am, the real me that, stands up for himself and fights for himself. And it's been a long time coming, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It probably helps to have, a bit more of that ability, where you're not going to have the rug pulled out from underneath you when doing so,
Yeah.
that's important. But a lot of the things you said about the dynamic with your father there is like so characteristic of manipulation, isn't it?
Oh,
You know,
absolutely. Narcissism, man. Like to a
yeah.
T.
Getting you
Mm.
to that point where you just can't be bothered fighting. And I think so many manipulative people rely on that tactic where they just, wear you down to the point where you're like, I give up. And then they have control over you.
100%, man. 100%. And that's what happened to me and my brother. We've had, mental health issues ever since, addiction. And yeah, there was a point where we were just broken, and because he had all the power and all the control. He did the same thing to my mom, like
Mm.
very much isolated from even her family. She wasn't allowed to see
Yeah,
his
that's a massive red flag, and always saddens
daughter.
me when
Yeah.
people do that, isolating someone from their family because it's just cutting off their support systems and making them reliant on that person. And then they usually systematically kind of break down that person's like self-worth so they don't have the, inner self-esteem to do what they want and they become reliant on that one manipulative person.
Definitely, man. And the people that they go for are empaths and people that are really is obviously susceptible to that. And generally those people, don't have flaws in them, I don't think. I mean, there's things they need to work on so that people can't
Mm,
take advantage of them. But at the end of the day, they're just more selfless people, and
yeah.
they get taken advantage of. And yeah, for sure that happened with like my whole family because my dad, being narcissistic. But but yeah, I guess that self-esteem thing you were talking about as well, like it kills your self-esteem, because I
Mm,
remember working with my dad and him convincing me and my brother, like, you couldn't get a job with anyone else. You're druggies, and like we're young. I'm a 15-year-old kid, like,
yeah,
you
you're
know,
going to take on
you got
both your
expelled from
boss and your
school.
dad,
Yeah, like you got expelled from school. Then it was the manipulation was like, so he's implemented that in me, so I've got low self-esteem. I'm like, "Oh, I'm a drug addict as well," and yeah, I
Mm,
did fail school. Yeah, he has got a point. And then it went from that to like, "You need to tell me where your mother is and her new phone number," and all like, he'd gone to a job and she'd lost, like, multiple jobs. Very violent with her, man, like viciously violent, but it went from that to, like, then, we were withheld money and pay and everything if we didn't give him
what
a
he
phone
wanted.
what he wanted,
Yeah.
and we weren't allowed to take our car, man. So we went in his ute, me, my brother, and him yelling the entire drive there and the entire drive home for, like, years, man.
That's good for the nervous system.
It was awesome. Yeah, hence where I am today.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with narcissists kind of going for the empaths. And, I'm on the empath side trying to get myself to that point where I'm not vulnerable to be taken advantage of. And I do think there's like conscious and unconscious aspects where like unconsciously, like narcissists see the light in and the positivity in an empath, and they're kind of like, oh, like that's someone that I want to be around. Like there's something that they get from that they're seeing positively, but then there's also like a darker aspect to it where it's like this can be my source of energy and kind of become an energy vampire, and they like break away your ability to kind of have your own support, have your own life, and then you just channel all that positivity into them. And the problem is once they drain all of that and you're at the point of depletion, you tend to get discarded, or, you have to pull away because you can't handle it anymore. And then you're like, fuck, I'm left like completely empty.
Mhm. Yet with no one around as well,
Yeah.
because, like, you've been isolated, so now you're lacking that connection, you're lacking the self-esteem, and what I've found, there's a lingering effect.
Mm,
So what they call it, like, just from one of the people that I follow on, Instagram, I think it is, but what it is you have an inner narcissist, which is lingering. So,
mm.
like, all the things the narcissist put you down about and all that, you now carry that on throughout your life. So you go to do something, go for a job interview, it's like, "I'm never gonna make it, man," subconsciously.
Mm.
Because for so many years that's been happening to you. So you doubt yourself and yeah, you're trying to work through that. And that, yeah, I think narcissistic abuse is one of the worst forms of like, you know, mental torture in a way.
Yeah.
And it's not it is recognized, but it's not like, like people talk about anxiety, depression. They're not like, oh my God, you were narcissistically abused.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah,
hear
yeah.
that. It's
No.
like, okay, I'm gonna semi figure this one out on my own. Like,
And the tricky thing is you often go through the realization that someone was a narcissist after the fact. And then there's this kind of level of like validation of like, oh, because, all of the manipulative tactics that they use tend to leave you with a degree of uncertainty. Wait, they said all this about me, but was it me or was it them? And you,
mhm.
you go into this kind of confused, uncertain state. And then when you actually come to the conclusion that no, they were actually manipulating me, you get this kind of level of anger and hurt that's become validated. And then you're like, fuck them. And you go into this victim state on top of what you already went through and
Yeah.
have this like negativity that's being projected at them.
Yeah, and that's obviously draining to you, holding on to that anger, and I mean, that's a part I'm going through right now, like this whole revenge phase, I'm calling it,
Yeah.
like, where I'm like, "Man, that motherfucker took advantage, so did that one, so did that one. I'm gonna go and get revenge on all these people that took advantage of me," because when you have been narcissistically abused.
Metaphorical revenge, of course.
Metaphorical, yeah, of course, but, like, you do feel that way. You do
Yeah.
feel you have so much anger in you, and you're like, "Oh my God," "Oh, I was such an idiot. How did I get fooled for so many years? How did
Yeah.
I allow this to happen and not stand up for myself?" Like, especially as a man, you're like, "Damn, that was weak of me," I guess is kind of the perception.
Yeah. And sometimes that's the damaging or the challenging thing because then you want to like reclaim that strength. And then that,
Which is not a positive thing to do,
yeah.
and the best way to, like the best way to heal from it, is to heal yourself
Mm.
and be successful, and I suppose that brings me back to kind of the original points we were making when I'm at a point now where like, in social media and that you see a lot these days where they talk about, get up, grind, da, da, da,
Mm.
da. And it's like, what they don't talk about is what about when you're healing?
Yeah.
Where's the balance?
Yeah, and I've thought about this myself lately. And I think a gym analogy is important with this that say when you go to the gym and you've worked out and you saw you've got DOMs, that's not a time to then go smash it at the gym again. That's a time to prioritize sleep, eating well, recovery,
Mhm.
and actually you got to heal before you can grow sometimes.
100%. And I think, like me personally, and I know so many other people do. I know you do yourself. Like we put so much pressure on ourselves to be moving forward at a certain rate,
Mm,
but what we don't factor in is I'm healing at the moment, and I've had however many years of mental health struggles. Right now it's okay to take a step back. Like for instance, I'll be like, I'm gonna go and get my black belt. I'm gonna do boxing. I'm gonna study. I'm gonna get a job as well. I'm gonna save all this money. And it's like, you know what? For 6 months, if you just maintained a gym routine
yeah,
and got your sleep into a good pattern,
yeah,
that would not only be okay, actually more beneficial in the long term.
yeah, absolutely. The problem is you get on social media and you look at what other people are doing and you compare yourself to that and you're like, oh, that's what I need to be doing if I want to get to where I am. And that
Mhm.
is true to some degree. But what I think a lot of the hustle and grind mindset doesn't cater for is people that have had a traumatic past, especially like people that are on the empath sensitive side of the equation.
Yeah.
And, hyper masculine people to work 16, 20 hours a day that have never had trauma in their past, that can be within their capacity. But, you start to add um, trauma, substance abuse, any of these things. And from the experience I've had, so I've gone through different coaching programs and, paid like decent money, 6 grand, 10 grand to be a part of it with, 15 to 80 people in those. And what I am noticing is the people that flourish in that environment are typically the people that they've still got, their own shit going on, don't get me wrong, but they haven't kind of gone that path of like trauma and like uh abuse and like different things that, often the people as well are like way lower on the lower socioeconomic end of the scale,
Mhm.
not cracked 50, 60K a year before.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, I think, yeah, for those people, the hustle and grind mindset isn't the best way. There's a bit of a different path that needs to take place. Cause I guess some people that I've listened to in the coaching space or business success space, they're like, don't meditate, just get in there and work. And I think, if you know what you're doing, if you've got that certainty, great. But for me, I trend towards uncertainty. So I need that morning routine to actually get myself into a space of feeling centered and having clarity on what I need to do.
Mhm.
And once I get to that point of inner certainty, yeah, then I have like a lot of energy. But I also find myself able to burn that out quickly. Like, say I'm doing study and I'm like, wait, do they mean this or this? And I'll bounce back between the two things that it means.
Mhm.
And then that burns my energy out.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like a lot of people are like that. Like even, Kevin Hart, Joe Rogan, like there are people that they have this morning routine that they do no matter what, like the
Mm,
meditation exercise. And I think in the long run, that's sustainable. Whereas the other way, like your body, when you listen to your body, and it might just be currently right now, it might be a lifetime thing, but um, if you're not meditating and you're not getting yourself into like a calm state, how long are you gonna be able to keep pushing through? Because I know for myself, I can't.
yeah.
Like, I have to come back to centering myself, meditating, and I remember reading this book, like the, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People,
Mm,
and it's one of the main points that I remembered from it was, it says, "Put first things first." And, like, so for me right now, the first thing and the first step for me is maintaining sobriety and my mental health. If I wanna jump the queue and be like, "All right, you know what? I've nearly got 2 months sober, I'm gonna jump into doing a 60-hour-a-week job," it's all gonna fall apart.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it'll have an effect on everything else. So, like, I remember a close friend as well, he told me once, he goes, "It all starts up here." Like, it all starts with your mind, and
Mm,
everything flows from that. So if you don't have a calm state of mind or you're not in a flow state, like, there's a reason for that. And yeah, like you're saying, it's trauma, it's upbringing, it's a whole range of things. But, I think the priority has to be healing from that. And like, prime example, you're still making a lot of progress whilst allowing yourself to heal. And I
yeah.
think I think that's necessary.
Well,
I wish I was the person that didn't have anything to heal from. You know what I mean? I had
yeah.
that white picket fence upbringing that was, but I'm also grateful because it's taught me a lot of things and I can help a lot of people through that experience.
I think ultimately it leads to a greater level of depth and empathy for others, which is a good thing. Cause, I've spoken to some people and like one person I've spoken to and they were like, no, I've never had depression. I was like, really? And that same person was also like quite, how do I want to put this diplomatically? Like judgmental of others and like didn't really have that care or understanding.
Mhm.
So, I feel like there's a bit of a correlation there with the depths that you've been through to yourself is the amount that you can appreciate it in others.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it gives you that, like, insight,
Yeah.
They tend to have, like, a lack of insight, and, look, I contemplate this all the time. Sometimes I'm like, "Nah, man, I just want that cruisy life," like, that would be the most ideal, but, I think it was Andrew Tate was saying the other day, he goes, "I'm so glad I was broke, and I was a brokey for so long, and I didn't have 10 grand in my bank account until I was 26 or something." He's like, "'Cause I appreciate having money now so much more."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you appreciate, like, if you've been in addiction and all that, you appreciate, like, the small things of sobriety so
Mm.
much more than if you just lived your whole life, never having had addiction or, So, yeah, I think it makes you not only appreciate life more, have more insight, and ultimately be able to help other people going through it as well,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. You know what I've realized is a really important part of healing is the neurotransmitters, hormones, like the physiological, physical side of things, trying to actually get your chemical factory that is your body to produce the right hormones and chemicals that make you feel good. And I think say if you've been addicted to a particular substance, it down regulates those things. And then you stop and you're like, oh, I don't feel as good. But if you can realize, okay, that's not just I was feeling better on drugs and now I feel worse that I'm sober. It's actually you're kind of going through a rebooting, and it might take a while for that to recover, but there's going to be a curve where it starts to get better and better. And then eventually you're going to surpass how you were even feeling on drugs because you're going to be producing more chemicals.
100%, yeah, like, you'll be operating at a higher vibration, like,
Yeah.
I can remember I did 7 months. I've done a few different periods where I've had months sober, but, yeah, I did 7 months, and I remember, like, I got to a point I was meditating a few times a day and, like, really on top of everything, and by the time I got to the 5, 6-month point, I was going out to, like, clubs, like, sober,
Mm.
and, picking up girls, having the best nights and that. I was operating at such a higher vibration, such a, like, just positive person, like, I
Yeah.
seen the good in everything and, like, there was no negative situation to me. I was like, "Awesome, I'm gonna level up."
Mm.
I
Mm.
just had something negative happen to me, wicked, look at what have I learned from this? So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's exciting, man, and for me, it's like, yeah, I have this, like, theory, this STEM theory, and it's like sobriety, therapy, exercise, and meditation
Mm.
is what I find. And therapy may not be like, not everyone's gonna go, I want to see a psychologist. Might be a therapeutic environment. But
Mm.
those, coaching courses you've done or even the podcast, can be
Yeah.
a therapy. Like, so yeah, I'll find with those four things, that's the key for me to be operating, the best version of myself. And if I
Yeah.
take one away, it affects the others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Meditation's definitely a key one for me. And that kind of leads into our second point of procrastinating. 'Cause I
I hear you.
so my meditation career started off at a pretty funny point. I was at home and I was trying to meditate, and mum came into the room and started saying something like, "Fuck off, mum, I'm trying to meditate." Like, it didn't go so well.
Yeah.
And then a few years on from there, I started using the visual, like guided visual meditations.
Mm.
And then that was, another level, but really it was me laying there kind of listening to something, which, is beneficial. But then a few years ago, when I went to Southeast Asia and started listening to Eckhart Tolle and then using some of the exercises and techniques he has in The Power of Now, that was like really transformative where I was going like way deeper. And probably just before listening to that, I was trying different meditation techniques to like really focus on the breath and kind of go deeper to within the body. And as I did that over the course of probably 5 months, at different times, I was starting to implement meditation more. Like I was waiting at a restaurant and I went to take my phone out. I was like, you know what? I'll just meditate now. And so I was meditating when I was like sitting down, waiting for my food. And it was the first time I'd done it in public. And people were laughing and I felt like they were laughing at me. And I'm like, it's okay. Just keep going through it. And then I got to a point where I could meditate in public without feeling any shame. And it felt easier in Southeast Asia where you know, if you're here in Australia where you've grown up in this culture, there's even more pressure that you shouldn't be behaving that way. But in a different country, you kind of don't have to worry about that as much.
Yeah, yeah, no emotion. And I
Mhm.
suppose that culture is, very much about meditation and Buddhism and that sort of
Yeah.
that's part of the culture. I'd love that would have been an awesome experience, man. Like I'd love that. I'd love to, go to a place like where it's, go to the temples and monks and
Yeah.
actually have a real proper meditation, like I suppose retreat. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I found when I was going there, I was looking for Cambo therapy, which is a frog that's extracted its secretions, burnt on the outer layer of skin and applied. And it basically is like a detox thing that Amazonian tribes used to use before war or hunt to clear negativity and weakness.
Yeah, right, cool.
Um, and basically, it's like if you've ever had a 24-hour sickness, where you're like throwing up and like feeling really hot, it basically does that in half an hour. And like, so you have it applied to your outer layer of skin, it goes into your lymph system, and then you feel this kind of like energy like coursing through your body in a kind of like rocking back and forth type motion. And with the practitioner that I was seeing while doing that, he like had like, the shaman drum and like was like and
Mhm.
like feathers while this is happening. And then so it ends up reaching your head and you feel this pressure. And then to relieve that, you need to throw up. And that's actually the intention of it, to purge. So you've got a bucket. And fortunately, it was just out the mouth because it can come out the rear end. And I was like,
Yeah.
do not want that to happen.
Yeah, yeah. Don't wanna
Um,
be as a positive an experience.
no. So you got to drink 2 liters of water before you start. So
Yeah,
you've
right.
got stuff to throw up, and then you throw up. And I didn't throw up that much, but yeah, I think the surrender is like such an important part of that process. So
Mhm.
basically, when you when it started to like happen, I was like, "Oh, this is intense. I don't want this to happen." And I was like, "Oh well, can't really stop it now." Kind of like a psychedelic, once a trip kicks in, you're like,
Mhm.
there's no resisting it. You got to surrender to it.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
think that surrender is so beneficial both in psychedelics and in Cambo or any experience, because it allows you to let what is be and releases a lot of tension in the nervous system. Mm.
100%. I mean, I have a semi relation to that, which is the ice baths
Yeah,
and
yeah,
just the surrender of that. 'Cause I've been doing them 3 times a week and yeah, it's just like, like you've got so much fear. The last thing you want to do, particularly in winter, like freezing cold days, is go into an ice bath, but you have to just surrender
yeah,
and be like, you know what, it's going to be uncomfortable to start with, but then I'm going to benefit from it for the rest
yeah.
of the day. So yeah, I haven't tried mushrooms or anything. It's something I'm definitely interested in, especially
Mm,
for mental health reasons. But right now with my sobriety, it's not really something I wanna do this at these early stages. I
yeah,
wanna get
for
a bit
sure.
bit more solid in myself kind of thing before I make those decisions. But yeah, man, I mean that I would love to experience something like that. Some months to do this for sure, like a retreat. Because I know you've done quite a few, like whether it's yoga classes,
Yeah,
at the
so
beach, I remember you saying, and you've done quite a few like meditative type retreats or holidays. Yeah.
yeah, so that's what I brought the Cambo thing up to say. So I was looking for a practitioner. I'd met someone at Happy High Herds at Glenelg, and I'd been talking about detox, and they're, oh, you want Cambo therapy? I was like, okay, and I looked into it, and I found a practitioner. They told me about that was doing it in Koh and so I was looking for their post, but I couldn't find it. But what jumped out to me was Buddhist nuns looking for an English teacher, come live their full routine and teach them English. And I was like, yeah, sick. So I reached out to them, and basically it was almost like the universe did a little bait and switch, like come find Canva and here's Buddhist nuns. And so I ended up going and staying with them for like probably 2, 3 weeks.
Mhm.
And I got there and there was like this bamboo hut and like one small pillow and like probably a 2 mil thick plastic picnic blanket that was the bed. And I was and like some of
Yeah.
these nuns are like 70 years old, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to be that Western guy that's a bitch and like, oh, can I have a blanket?
Yeah.
And like, so like, I'm sleeping on there for like first few nights, and like, I get 3 hours of sleep, and then I'm waking up every half an hour with like my sides getting absolutely bruised.
Yeah.
And then by like night 3, I'm like, can I have a blanket? Like,
Be an adjustment, wouldn't it?
yeah, but that was really good because they got up at 3 a.m., did Buddhist chanting, Buddhist philosophy talk, then a little hour break, 6 a.m., go for a walk to pick up the food that the local villagers donate to them and bless them in return. And then coming back, have like an hour, then breakfast, chanting and prayer over the food for like 15 minutes. And by that stage, I'm like super hungry. I'm like, oh, come on, let's just eat. Like,
Mm.
but to have that kind of self control was good.
Yeah.
And what I found was by having that desire to eat, it was like producing saliva, which has enzymes which better helps break down food. Plus, the meditation aspect of that's going to get you in a more state conducive to absorb the food. So I was like, they probably don't realize, but there's actually some scientific benefit to doing that. Plus, the connection with spirit or whatever you want to, Buddha.
Yeah, yeah, and I find that connection, like, in groups is really powerful.
Mm,
Like, surrendering in a group environment and
yeah,
being vulnerable in a group environment really levels you up. Like, my experience with it is completely different, but I've been going to NA lately,
yeah,
and that's I found that very therapeutic. Like, I'm not one, I'm still have my ifs and buts about it. I'm like, "Nah, some of these people just need a lot of therapy." And like, I'm like, "Nah, these motherfuckers, what are they talking about?" Like, that they're so happy. How are you happy if you're still coming here after 10 years?
Mm,
Like, but I'm starting to, I suppose, surrender a little bit to it because, I still have my opinions on it, but what I've found is I take what I find is helpful for me and I leave the rest.
yeah,
And, there's a lot, 50% maybe that I don't, 100% agree with, but the other 50% of like being vulnerable in front of a group,
yeah,
having people all come together and they're like, look, man, you hear their story and it's like, shit, man, I mean, I've had, detox I've been to multiple times, jail. I've had my fair share of like pain, but hearing other people and they're like, they were homeless for 10 years, they
mm,
lost their kids, or like it's some like my wife died in a car accident, I was the drink driver. It's like, whoa, man, it's like
yeah,
humbling to sit there and be like, wow, like, and it's also comforting being like, I'm not the only one.
yeah,
Like, these
yeah,
people completely understand where I'm coming from. They're all trying to better their life, because I'm very much an introvert, and it's something that that I'm working on. Like, I still prefer my own time, but I think for growth, you have to expand with other people, and that like you can't
mm,
stay isolated and expect yourself to grow or have enough connection that you're happy. It
yeah.
just doesn't work that way.
No, I think that it can be a period where it's beneficial to hone, say, discipline, focus, your kind of own interpersonal skills. But yeah, there does come a point where your growth is capped, where you do need others in the equation to, even just like get triggered and be able to draw your own boundaries.
Yeah,
Sometimes those things are quite useful. But
definitely. Yeah.
then, like you were saying, like, the need for connection is something that if you go too introverted, I think you can get a good degree of connection from yourself, at least in my experience, when I've been tapped into meditation and I'm like really like in connection with myself.
Hmm.
There's definitely like a less need for external connection. And the times when I'm least connected from myself is the time when I'm seeking it externally.
Yeah, dude, I definitely agree with that. Like I was saying, that 7-month period
Mm,
where I was going out a bit on the weekends and that, my my most of my life was just me. You know what I mean? Like every day, but I was really content and happy because I was in a real flow state. I was meditating. Like for instance, just going to Marion can be all the connection that I need. When I'm in
yeah.
a really good mental state, I'm just having a conversation with someone over a coffee and I'm like,
Yeah.
life is good, I'm
Yeah.
like feeling good, feeling healthy, looking healthy, might have a chat with a girl, might have a chat with a random guy or an older lady at a bus stop.
Yeah.
And that can be all the connection. I mean, I think there is a point that everyone wants more in terms of like an intimate connection,
Yeah.
but that's a different topic. But yeah, I definitely know what you mean when you're in that meditative state and that calm state. I love my own company. I don't think
Mm.
that's ever has to change, but in order to grow and I suppose progress in life, I need to also push the boundaries a little bit in terms of connectivity and going outside my comfort zone.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
the thing I've found for me. Like, say, when I was like 19, I was out every night of the week, every weekend. And so for me, my growth was actually to restrain that and take more time to spend at home and be with myself.
Mhm.
And then, like, at some point, like, I've gone through periods like kind of prior to COVID, I lost my health a bit and was staying at home. And I probably was speaking to two friends once a fortnight. And that was like the only connection I was having for like months. And I
Mhm.
kind of went through like a pre isolation before COVID. And ironically, some of the symptoms that I was having was like identical to what long COVID is, which is weird. But basically, yeah, I got really used to being in my home space, connected with myself. And then at that point, like, it was almost becoming uncomfortable to go out and connect with others. And I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
now like I'm almost getting a little bit too comfortable being in my own energy and I don't want to leave my space.
Yeah. And there's that balance, isn't there? There's that balance. And that's what I find with that's what I like. I really, not to just, sound like creepy, but that's why I really enjoy like female company
Mm,
right now in my sobriety because I find the pressure to, drink, there isn't any, like in my experience with the girls that I've hung out with, I don't hang out with ones that are, on meth or they might smoke weed here and there, but not like every day with a
Yeah.
pipe by the bed. So the girls I'm hanging out with, I'm still getting that interaction, like we'll go out for dinner, go and see
Mm.
movies and all that. And that's all the connection I need every so often. But yeah, I agree with you. There's definitely a balance where you can pull back so much that when you do start socializing, it's quite uncomfortable. And it's
Yeah.
like relearning to socialize because I've just spent 3 months on my own now. Like I'm drained from a
Yeah.
2 hour social event.
Well, you know what I've found has been like a good hack in some ways is to reset my baseline of, say, socialization. Like if I spend that much time at home, I go out and talk to someone at like the cash register, and I'm like, wow, that was so fulfilling. I'm good for another week.
Bro, I hear you. I hear you so much, man. Yeah. I'm just like this girl that I girl and guys that I get like a coffee from, man, and that connection alone throughout a day. I'm like, I'm good, man. I've gone home, I'm gonna watch a movie, put my Ugg boots on, like I've fulfilled my extrovertness. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, but the same can be done with food as well. Like, so I've gone like 6 weeks without having like any sugar. Pretty much had my first snack the other day, which was like half a packet of chips, and before that, I'd have like a little bit of ginger and garlic with my meal, and I'm like, oh, this tastes intense. This is good. Like, and like, it's probably not a good thing to deprive yourself so you can actually feel better.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely space within our culture to reduce like the indulgences, whether it's, social media, phone
Mhm.
over technology overuse, eating or whatever it is. Like if you're in an excessive state, to draw back to a healthier baseline. And then when you do have it infrequently, you're like, that was enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, the way to, massive part of growth is like discipline, but I think discipline is restraint. Do you
Mm.
know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have to restrain yourself from doing those desires and things that you're in a habit of doing that aren't positive for you?
That's a profound distinction because, you think of discipline as, oh, I need to do this. But you're probably right that discipline is more about choosing not to do things.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
In order for you to fulfill the positive things that you need to do. You
yeah,
know what I mean? Like, and that's something I've been struggling with lately, but it's restraint, which is, there's this technique actually that I learned from a counselor. And I think it was a walnut. Like, you put a walnut in your mouth, right? And you soak on it for a little while and you get the taste and you describe what the taste is. So you're really in the present moment and you smell it first and you're like, okay, yeah, got the smell. You're tasting it and it's really salty. And what happens is you really, really want to swallow it. Like naturally, just instinctively, you're like, all
yeah,
right, it's time to start chewing. And you hold off for a
yeah.
period of time and you say to yourself, I'm in control, you're not in control, brain. And then like you start to chew it and you chew it up and you do the same process. You really
Yeah,
want to swallow and you
yeah.
hold yourself back from swallowing for 10 seconds or so. And it's just a way to
Override your instinctive.
those like impulses and those natural kind of, habits that you have. Like for me, with the phone, reaching over the phone first thing in the morning. Like
Yeah,
I think the biggest growth comes from like restraint, like stopping yourself from doing those things that aren't gonna lead you down the right path, and
yeah.
and it can be hard to do, like, and I find meditation is, like, directly correlated with that. If you've got a really messy brain or you've been, like, through a lot of trauma, anxiety, and you've been running high, like, say, like, I've been diagnosed PTSD, so, like, so for years I've been elevated,
Mm,
and
mm.
heightened, so, like, you have to get your base level back down, I think, to implement that, to the best of your advantage.
Absolutely. And I think with the phone thing, sometimes in addition to the restraint is having strategical things that make it harder to do. So let's say what I might start doing is putting my phone in a different room in the morning or like at night. So in the
Yes.
morning, like I can't just like, because the thing is, me at nighttime is like, I'm not going to look at my phone in the morning. Me in the morning was like, oh, fuck, it's okay. I'll just watch it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, and the
Yeah,
thing is as well,
so
like,
true.
when you don't have the energy to get up, it seems like a better idea to, oh, I'll just like, look on my phone and, wait here while the energy kind of builds.
Yeah.
And I know that my speed of getting out of bed in the morning is like a real direct correlation with like how good my state of health is. Cause there's been times where, I can get up the second I wake up and get out, and you can train yourself to do that too.
Mm.
And there is a little bit of that flows into it, but also like levels of inflammation, how much energy you do have available does make that a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah, I think another huge thing, man, is like your sleep quality. You
Yeah.
know, like let's say you like I'm a very light sleeper. My mum gets up like 6 o'clock or whatever. You know, so if I'll be on my phone scrolling and it'll be 11, 12 o'clock. If it ever gets to past the point of 10 o'clock and I have to get up at 6, it really affects me. It
Yeah.
affects me in my productivity the next day. It affects me in all areas, whether it's my anxiety levels, I'm at the show, I'm not feeling 100% myself. And then I'm like, oh, right, I had 5, 6 hours sleep last
Mm.
night, broken sleep. So I think, yeah, that has a massive impact on it as well, sleep quality. And that's something that that's another thing that I wanted to put on like this month, like phone usage and sleep quality, which kind of tie in together for me.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been trying to dial my sleep quality in a lot lately. And so getting the temperature right has been a key thing. So my mum bought me some polyester kind of like really warm sheets.
Hmm.
And they were good. Like they heated up, you put the electric blanket on in 10 minutes, they're like roasting.
Yeah.
But then I found as I was sleeping in them, by about 3 a.m., I'd wake up like really hot and like it was prior to the time that I should be waking up.
Hmm.
So I took them off, put cloth sheets on, and basically like then I'm like, oh, too cold, gone into the Goldilocks effect
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
So
yeah.
then like I put the electric blanket on, one, okay, no, it's still getting too hot. So then I'm like, I'll go to bed with clothes on, but no electric blanket. And I found the right fucking balance. And
Yeah.
like, so what was interesting, then in addition to that, I'm timing my meals. So basically I got to find this right balance where I eat enough during the day that I don't wake up hungry throughout the night, because that will
Mhm.
happen if I undereat my calories and maintenance.
Yep.
Then in addition, I need to eat my dinner at the right time. So like, let's say 7:30, and then have a protein shake at like 9, because I get hungry after dinner,
Mhm.
and then have that. So that's like 1.5 hours before going to sleep. So I'm not hungry, but I'm not digesting food.
Yeah.
And like last night I had it dialed in. And so I've got a Fitbit where I track my deep sleep.
Mhm.
And normally like an hour and 30 deep sleep is probably like a good level where that will start to get me like recovered and feeling better. If I dip below that, I'll be feeling like I didn't get a good sleep. And if
Mhm.
I get more than that, I'm starting to feel like I really got a good sleep.
Yeah, yeah.
And so last night I got 2 hours of deep sleep. And
Awesome, yeah.
today I woke up feeling like there was something that had almost like healed in my brain, where yesterday I had a fair degree of brain fog. And that was in part because of having these chips with histamine intolerance, where inflammation was going through the body and I could feel so sluggish yesterday.
Mhm.
But then in addition to probably eating clean, having the right sleep strategy,
Yeah.
yeah, I woke up today like, oh wow, like I can feel I've leveled up a bit in my mental clarity.
Yeah, and it has such an impact, doesn't it?
Mm,
Like, those little things aren't really little things. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
that time you go to bed or that, the food, yeah, even like you said, like it's scientifically proven. I was listening to some podcast with, I can't remember the guy's name, but it's like, specializes in sleep hygiene, and he was on Joe Rogan. And he said that like your temperature, so you got to like drop 1 degree, I think it is,
Mm,
prior to going to sleep.
yeah.
If you're too warm, it's not gonna,
Yeah.
it's not gonna work. You're not gonna be able to sleep as well, or it's gonna take you a lot longer. Like pitch black room.
Yep.
So I've got like just a face mask because my room's not like 100% pitch black. Can't be bothered turning off all the PowerPoint, so I've got a face
Yeah.
mask.
Yep.
um, and yeah, the eating, like the time that you eat, if you're gonna eat right before bedtime, you're gonna be too full and your body's like digesting, so it's working. When you're supposed to be going to sleep, so that's gonna make it harder for you to, because it's processing the food. Your body's working. It's gonna be harder for you to sleep. So yeah, all those things like have such a big impact. Like the phone use, all this sort of stuff, and yeah, it's like the like you said. I think you can't. It's not something that you can is solely just work on willpower.
Yeah.
Like if you have some strategies like putting that phone in the other room
Mm,
or putting it in a drawer, or, like setting an alarm, say, and being like, okay, at 10 o'clock, I can grab my phone. Or let's say you get up at 6, at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, I can grab my phone. Once I've had breakfast, I've had my
yeah.
coffee, done my meditation, then I can look at my phone for this period of time,
Yeah.
and then get on with the day. So, yeah, definitely having techniques. I suppose it's the same as like other addictions. Like if you're quitting alcohol and weed the first thing, or cigarettes, the first thing they tell you is like, don't have weed on you or
Mm.
alcohol like in the house for the first couple of weeks, you know? It definitely makes it easier. And although you can restrain yourself, those strategies are gonna help heaps, man.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think a pattern disrupt is something that I like to implement. So like a circuit breaker. So like, let's say in the evening, like if I know that, usually I get caught in like looking at shit on the computer and like that goes from 8 until 10. If I put like an alarm on at say 9 or 8:30, go for a walk, and like I'm like, cool, I can come back to that. But I go for the walk, and during that, I'm like, do I actually want to do that? And then I can actually assess, actually, you know what? Like, I'm ready to go to bed now. And because otherwise, like, if I'm trying to make that decision while doing the thing, like, say, looking at something on the computer or playing games, within that, I'm like, nah, just later, later. And then it ends up
Mhm.
being hours later.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely that circuit breaker is massive, man. And
Mm.
and speaking of like the walks, like I find for your mental health, one thing that I've found, nature, man. Nature is such a positive, like it's away from your phone use. I mean, I still have my AirPods and that when I go for a walk,
Mm.
but like, yeah, it's just such a positive going for a walk and listen to a podcast or something. Not on your phone. You're not staring at your phone because you can't. You're crossing roads or you're walking on a trail, and it's such a positive for my mental health. Getting out, there's something really zen, peaceful, and tranquil, like just going on a walk on a trail and getting out into nature. It just grounds me, man. And I
Yeah.
actually had an experience like a few weeks ago where I went and like I was having a real stressful day and I went and kicked the footy, but it was barefoot.
Mm.
I was barefoot on the grass, man, and it was so grounding. I hadn't
Mm.
done it for years, and like I had like a really powerful experience with it, man. Like it was just very, very grounding. I could feel like
Yeah.
in the present moment, I guess, because my
Just,
senses were engaged. My feet, I could feel the
yeah.
cold, the wet patches, everything in it.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, it really helped, man.
Do you still have that footy?
Yeah, I do.
Should we
Yeah,
go for a kick?
we should, man.
All
I
right.
reckon that's a
Let's
good
leave it
idea.
there.
All right, let's do it, man. It's good
Sweet, bro.
chatting as
Good chatting with
always.
you.
You too, man.